council meeting of Amberley Town Council. It's quite a lot to get through, so I'm just going to push through as quickly as possible. 22-164, apologies for absence.
Councillor Hutton, Councillor Jones, Councillor Dubois, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much, all as explained. Happy to accept those? Yeah. Lovely, thank you very much indeed. 22-165, declarations of interest. Any in any way, shape or form?
Yeah. Well, yes, I work for the Ambulance, and they are. Oh,
They are, you do. I know Philip House because my wife from there, so just in case that's any relevance. Anything from
we have allowed to do that. We'll never stop each other.
I just wrote it down, I've got your case. If anything comes up that you forgot, please let us know at the time. 22-166, to approve and sign the minutes of the full council meeting from the 21st of March. As an accurate record, I have a copy here. If we're all happy, I can go ahead and sign. Any questions or queries?
Who wants us to go ahead?
I will, if there's no questions or queries. David's willing to propose it, Val seconded. All okay to vote on that? Thank you very much indeed. Public participation from interested parties. No, lovely. Consideration of requests from interested parties, anything? No? Cracking on. 21-169, North Northants Council, to receive a report from NNC Ward Councillor. Helen, very grateful to see you here. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So, if it's all right with you guys, I thought I'd update you on the what we're doing with regards to our Ukrainian guests. I thought you might appreciate an update because I know many of you have shown interest. That would be a bit casual and perch. We've made two decisions in the last couple of months at, I nearly said East Northants Council, at North Northants Council, going back a few years now. So the first was additional use of the grant, the Homes for Ukraine grant. So if I just go through with you the decisions we've made, that we're going to use that grant for three more things additional to what we already were. So we are going to be paying some money for an access to enhanced health checks to support general practice. So we were approached by the Integrated Care Board about a package of financial support to improve the access to health checks and support for our Ukrainian guests. And it's been agreed to offer a new service which aims to provide newly arrived Ukrainian residents with fair and equal access to primary medical services, while recognising their additional needs arising from the circumstances of their arrival. So the service will provide both newly registered patients who fled the conflict in Ukraine and the registering GP practice with additional support. The additional funding at £150 per patient for this local enhanced services for GP practices to plan or update their workforce setup, training needs and infrastructure to support the registration of newly arrived Ukrainian residents and to deliver a robust and timely health assessment of their initial health and care needs. This will also be backdated to look at anybody who's arrived between now and when the scheme started, to make sure that if there are any of our Ukrainian guests who haven't had the treatment and support that they need, that they will get these enhanced checks. So I think that's really important. In particular, I'm sure you'll be aware of the possibility of increased mental stress that some of our guests will have been through, maybe all of our guests will have been through. So that's going to be very much, that'll be part of the focus of these new enhanced services for our guests. The second new element is a fixed amount of support for travel costs. Many Ukrainians are in places like Oundle or some of them even more remote villages and are struggling to get around, and they're having very much to heavily lean on their hosts to get them about the place. So we had a look at other schemes that have been brought forward in other areas, and we've decided to give every Ukrainian who has arrived here since the beginning of the scheme. A one-off grant of £65. That doesn't sound a huge amount, but it's sort of pretty much what's being done elsewhere. And it's just to help it say, okay, if you need taxi journeys or bus journeys, whatever, to get to appointments, and that kind of thing, that's what we have decided to do. And then the third element of the additional use of the grant, which is the sort of most substantive part, is support for guests to move into private rented accommodation. So what we're finding is that Ukrainian guests are finding it very difficult to get rented accommodation because they don't have the funds to pay for deposits and things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the council's existing Lettings Plus scheme for private landlords to offer a home for rent. Private landlords will be asked to set the rent at an affordable level, reflecting the local housing allowance. Now, the local housing allowance is quite low, as many of you will probably know. To incentive private landlords, it's proposed that the council provides the following support using this fund. Assistance in setting up the tenancy, advice about regulation for landlords and tenants, a point of contact for their tenants, and the deposit of 1 month's rent. Now, we have to be realistic. That level of rent is low. It's not going to be able to get rent everywhere. Not all landlords are going to be able to offer that. So where landlords are unable to offer rent at the affordable level, the council will cover the first month's rent paid in advance, cover the difference between the local housing allowance rate received by the tenant and the rent charged for up to a year, provide support to set up an agreement and pay £500 for each tenancy agreement for guests to purchase furniture and items for their new home. So we hope that this level of support is going to enable some of our guests who are ready to move on, be able to enter the private rented market, help to get them onto their feet and managing, and then hopefully we'll find that they are then self-sustaining, but we'll always be there anyway if that's not the case. So that's the latest that we're doing with the fund, and as you know, you may remember that the fund is £10,500 per Ukrainian guest. They have leave to remain for 3 years. So the view of us at the council is that we've got this pot of money, but we've got to be responsible and make sure it's there to cushion and help our guests over that 3-year period. And we've obviously also still got people turning up now. So that's going to, I think, really move us forward, because a lot of hosts and guests have been highlighting this difficulty with, they've been for 12 months now with their hosts. It's getting difficult. And it's time to move on. So hopefully this is going to really help that along. Future ideas we have for using more of that fund is looking at employability schemes and developing the ESOL offering. So ESOL, I can never remember what it stands for, but it's basically English lessons. So we want to really develop that as well, because we're also finding that some of our guests ready to go into the world of work, they want to go into the world of work, but they need some support with that. So that's the fund. The government has also given has offered another fund called the Local Authority Housing Fund. Now, refugee resettlement. This fund is very specific. It's actually to purchase homes. The government gives us several £1 million. I'm very bad with numbers, so I've forgotten the exact amount. But they provide a certain amount of money, and then we provide the rest of the money to buy homes for use. Part of it is for the Afghan scheme. Hopefully people haven't forgotten about that, but we have quite a few Afghan families still stuck in hotels. And we pledged as a council to home at least 10 families. I believe we've now housed 6 families, but the government wants us to do more. So we're still trying to find homes for 4 families, and they want us to house another 4. So part of that fund is to buy 4 larger properties to be able to house these 4 Afghan families. And that's because typically our Afghan families are generally large and they're often 3 generations. So we're finding that we need 4-bed properties or more. So that is part of it. Then the other part of it is to buy a further 26 homes, and that is to help with homelessness amongst our Ukrainian guests. So, as you know, not all Ukrainian guests have come through the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Many have come through the family scheme. Those relationships have often broken down reasonably quickly, and those families are presented to us as homeless, and therefore we have to house them. Some relationships between hosts and guests have broken down, and they again present as homeless, and various other reasons for why that has happened. The government recognises that that's putting a really big burden on our temporary accommodation. As a council, we struggle already with homelessness, our homelessness duty, just without the addition of our Ukrainian guests becoming homeless. So the idea really is that these homes will be there for us to be able to house Ukrainian guests who do become homeless or are at risk of becoming homeless. In the fullness of time, all 30 of these houses will become part of our local housing stock, so they'll become council housing or temporary accommodation. Actually for us as a council, it's quite a good opportunity for us to get some money from government, to be able to get some houses for our housing stock, and at the same time help some of our refugees that are very much in need, and sometimes in quite desperate situations. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the most recent developments from the council's point of view. And I just thought you might find that helpful to just know and understand what it is that we're doing at the moment. And you might have questions about that, or you might have some questions about other things to do with the council.
Thank you very much, Helen. Any questions about that in particular, or about anything else NNC based? No. Fantastic.
Oh, you're an easy crowd tonight.
We are. Quick question about
Yes.
the Ukrainian house purchasing.
Yes.
Fund. Presumably, that's not going to be in all the areas of the county, is it?
It's predominantly going to be in our more urban areas. One, because the cost of housing, we're not going to be able to purchase the houses at the right cost too far out. But also, it doesn't make sense to be buying these properties where there's very little transport, not that much in the way of work, difficult access to services. So unless there's a really good reason, it'll probably be Wellingborough, Corby, Rushden, maybe Kettering. Also, it has the added benefit of you help to keep those communities together a little bit, but yeah, that's the expectation.
So if there's any of the guests living near Arundel or in one of the villages around here, they're probably going to end up moving on to the rental scheme if they can find it.
Hopefully, obviously we want people to be able to have their own homes, be able to manage their own lives, to be part of the communities they live in, and feel, like they're able to stand on their own 2 feet. So where they are able to do that, absolutely, we want to be able to support that. And that's why although we want the rent to be set at the affordable level, we accept that's not going to be possible across the whole of North Northamptonshire. And so that first year of paying the difference between the two will hopefully mean that people who've made ties already in Arundel, for example, they feel part of this community, hopefully they'll be able to settle here or at least nearby.
And the kids might be able to.
Exactly, exactly.
Anything else? Very good.
I think, Mr. Mayor, Helen is in the picture about about our initiative to try and help the Arundel medical practice secure larger premises where our mayor wrote to Tom, who contacted the NHS authorities. So the next thing we saw was when Tom forwarded to us a copy of the letter he'd received from the Chief Nursing Officer of the ICB, where she gave a lot of additional information but rather sidestepped the basic question. namely that population of Ireland is increasing, 230 new houses coming on stream, plus the practice having made clear that they want more space. So I have suggested, and it's on our agenda for this evening, that we play it step by step. Let the practice see the ICB's letter, and then initiate a further tripartite meeting, us chairing, the ICB and the practice, so the minds can meet. Then it will be a step forward. And I think we'd all like to express our thanks to Tom for grasping the nettle, even although we realistically appreciate it's going to be a long haul.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read the response from the Integrated Care Board. I believe, because you asked a question, a sort of a follow-up question about when this remaining Section 106 money will come forward, and made the point about the increased number of people going to be living in Arundel. Now, I think that £80,000 that was referenced in that letter is actually related to those two current developments that are being built at the moment. And although I don't know what the trigger is, but it's usually when a certain number of houses are built, that's the trigger point, or when a certain number of houses are occupied, that's the trigger point. So it'll be one of those two things. I'd be really interested to ask the medical centre, is it maximising the use of what it currently has? It may well be, but does it have? Obviously, the most recent money created an area where they could do, video streamed appointments, do their paperwork, various other things, and the letter mentioned freeing up the 7 treatment rooms, consulting rooms to be used. So I want to know, are they actually making full use of those 7 treatment rooms at all times? Do they actually have the staff to be able to do that? Because in the end, there's not much point building another big building if they don't have enough staff. And that comes partly down to funding and partly down, I believe, to the practice themselves. Lakeside Practice have expanded at a very great rate of knots. So they've shown that they've been prepared to invest in the past. So I think when you get them round the table, I would ask them, are you sweating your asset, as it were? Are you really making the most of what you've already got? If they are, then fair enough. They need more. But it's labyrinthine when it comes to the fact that you've got these essentially private businesses as part of the NHS. Pretty much everything they do is paid for by the NHS. They seem to get some investment from the NHS in terms of building, but they also have to invest themselves. It's such a difficult and strange setup within the rest of the NHS. I know it's not, you've got all sorts of anomalies. But yeah, that's probably what I'd be asking them, to make sure what they've got they use.
My understanding was that they have done that, and that certainly the GPs were being asked to sort of hot desk and move into, when they weren't actually seeing patients, they would do their admin work, back office as it were. So I know they had a bit of a restructure and they changed all the reception area. That's last year or so.
That's right.
And I think that is how they've intended to operate, whether they actually are.
It'd be interesting to see. But, Rupert, you're absolutely right. It's one of those long haul things. I don't want to be depressing, but we've been fighting for, the development of the local general hospital for years and years and years. We've had the money promised for years and years and years. And every time you think you're about to make progress, it will grind to a halt, and it turns out another business plan is required or something like that. It's just the length of time it takes for any NHS-based thing to come forward is even worse than us in the council. We're slow, but the NHS, oh my goodness. But no, absolutely, I applaud you to keep pushing and you know, keep talking to the partners and you know, keep at it, chipping away. Eventually, we'll get there. I'm sure.
I think we will. Quite diplomacy.
Absolutely. Helen, thank you for your time and thank you for your continued informing of us and your continued support.
No
Much
problem.
appreciated. Thank you.
I will leave you to it and see you next week.
Enjoy, absolutely. 21-170-01 to receive a copy sent to the leader of North Northampton regarding Flat Field. The letter we all have a copy of, effectively from the Flat Field Association, just asking about progress and I suppose methodology as well. We've received it, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple of follow-up emails, but I think it's predominantly NNC explaining the reasons for why these things, you know, why it's taking time, and they're having to sort of go through all of the sort of terms, conditions, and agreements legally, and it is going to take a bit of time until it's sorted.
Do we feel the need that we want to formally chase that? We've had the emails back. I was confident to do it.
Yeah.
So, and Wayne's point is that it's just taking time to get everything squared away, and we want to make sure everything is squared away properly,
Yeah.
so we didn't get any hidden surprises. So, are we happy just to receive and move on?
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is that Paul spoke to me about this at the Business Association meeting in QVH when I was representing the town council. And the biggest thing I guess that he was concerned about was the additional road access to Platform Road, and wanted to stress again that he saw no need for that, and in fact was concerned that it might be hiding a different agenda.
He has strong views.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
I don't think there's anything in the emails that Edwina sent back to him that suggests that.
And not from the
And
meetings.
that's
I've
what
had.
I told him as well.
Exactly. So we can reinforce that with
No, and I think they purposely before Christmas changed its status to open space. I don't think they would have done that if they.
They very publicly
Yeah,
said what they're going to do with it now.
and we're in the process, the asset of community value process, and they've agreed that we're the only bidder, so it is just now sorting out access.
Right, thank you very much indeed. 22-170-02 to receive a response from the ICB in the letter to Tom Pursglove, which we just discussed with Helen briefly. Again, it's sort of saying, yeah, they've spent some money to make some changes, they'd like some more money. I think, are they asking us to come up with some ideas for money? You may have misread that, but we welcome your support in identifying any sources of capital funding. Maybe that's to Tom rather than us, but put down the back if you say that.
Yeah.
But I think that, as I recall from the meeting we had in here, Jerry and the Owl and Rupert, you were online, the surgery's point is that they don't have the staff at the moment to make their assets work any harder, and that's a common problem in places. David?
The thing that sort of struck me in the letter is the sentence that says there's been no real noticeable increase to animal medical practices list size in the past 18 months. There might not have been. However, there are 250 odd houses that are going to be developed pursuant to planning permissions already granted, and another application for another 53. That wholly fails to address that issue as to whether they can cope with 300 more houses.
And that letter, actually, the way it's written there, makes it look as if there were no problems before then. Absolutely.
Slightly anomalous that the same has been there since increase in the last 18 months, and then goes on to talk about section 106 monitoring forthcoming developments. It's kind of left hand and right hand.
And it is a bit unclear which of those developments are, whether it's the Cobstock Road
Yes.
and sort of
Yes.
Yes.
Rupert.
Thank you. I strongly suggest that instead of getting immersed in detail now, we agree that Emma sends off the ICB's letter to the head medic and Simon Beasley, the manager at the practice, inviting their comments and offering to hold a further tripartite with them and the ICB. Well, that will enable us to ask the fundamental questions with a view to agreeing a way forward and addressing the concerns that our colleagues.
Can I just, I think Simon is the project manager for ICS. I don't think he's the practice manager.
He's not a practice manager.
No.
Project manager.
Well,
Yeah.
in any case, he's head of the admin side, regardless of the job title, and the head medic is by definition the head medic. And I think it's important, I think, to get them both together, but when we also have the ICD in. Because inevitably, frankly, in any organisations where you have professionals and generalists, as you will know from your experience in HR, inevitably there's sometimes honest differences of judgments. So it's best to have men together when we want to discuss policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to suggest that we forward it on to them, but I think they'll just come back with the same answers they had done previously.
Yes, yes. Another letter from somebody who's not the person who should be writing the letter. That was not an appropriate.
And wouldn't this just be a repeat of the meeting that we had?
Possibly. The only question is, I seem to recall seeing an email that Tom Purslow was volunteering to chair a meeting. Is that right?
Well, that was an idea I had, which I would suggest we keep in the background, just in case we get nowhere after our next tripartite.
Well, is it worth maybe just sending them the letter and asking for their thoughts, and then seeing what comes from that?
Yeah, can do.
So
Yeah.
step by step, the Henry Kissinger approach.
And so, sorry, I don't know who Simon Beasley is.
I think Simon
I think
Beasley
he's
is.
the integrated care systems project manager for the practice. He works in Corby, as I understand. He was when I was on the beat.
So I think he was responding to your questions earlier, Rupert, about the building changes, I think.
What's it?
So if we send it to the surgery, maybe, just directly, because it might be interesting to find out who their practice manager is.
Well, they've got a new one, but I checked on the website this week and it's not published on the website.
So maybe
And
just,
he's been
So,
there a while now, at
do I
least 6 months.
Address it to the practice manager?
yeah,
And to the head medic. Remember?
I don't
Who's
know
that?
what it is now because the previous practice manager actually moved jobs, so I know it's a relatively.
let's just do it to the practice manager for the moment,
Yeah.
because I don't know who the head medic is.
No.
That's half the problem. And it
Well, I
was
think
as in you.
Yeah, I think it is still, but
We don't want
she's
to let that-
retiring.
We don't want to leave the medics out. They should get fully cited in our
Yeah.
approaches.
Yeah.
If you like,
Catherine Hill is usually the person involved.
So we just say,
Resigned effectively.
Yeah.
not till June.
Yeah.
So we say Catherine Yule and the practice
Yeah.
manager.
I don't, she's not leaving till June, is she? I don't think.
So she'll still be in post, so there's nothing handed over to anyone else. Thank you very much indeed. 22-170-03, discussion paper on community transport. This is me, I'm afraid. It's something that came out of lots of conversations I had back in February about connectivity in the town. Local Area Partnership had its big presentation here in December and said that it's the biggest problem for this part of the county is connecting to services. And when I was in Uppingham a while ago, I saw the Uppingham Hopper and also found on the NNC website that they help fund a community minibus in Rushton, not Rushton. So putting all of it together, I spoke to 2 or 3 people at these various establishments who were very helpful and very keen to help in some way, shape or form. I've tried to put forward some ideas, that's all they are. The key message from at least Uppingham is that a town council like ours can't run a community transport bus because there has to be a community transport association. So I think we could be catalytical, if that's a word, in helping start that in Hemel. And the idea of, you know, helping to maybe deal with some of the parking and connectivity and car journey issues from the present estate and larger buildings coming, and also helping support local businesses, local services, connect the medical practices, the library, etc. It just seemed a possibility. So all I'm proposing here is that perhaps we start looking at how we might run a community transport system. The key thing being that there is Section 106 money in theory coming to North Northampton Council from the Comstock Meadows development and possibly the St Christopher's Drive development. So there's an opportunity to get some funding. And the Uppingham model is, it funds itself. The Rushton model is that it gets some help from North Northampton. So I don't know, there we are. Any questions or queries about the idea of, is it worth looking at how we can run it? David?
It's not a question or query so much. I mean, I think it's a very interesting idea. Just thinking in terms of the way of taking it forward, we've asked for a transport group. Could they perhaps organise a meeting with Transition Handle with a view to taking this thing further jointly?
It's a good idea. I think volunteer action, I was hoping to quiz more clearly next Wednesday. I've spoken to Rachel briefly about this and can meet with her in a couple of weeks' time just to sound them out about, I know they have different setups, but there's a group of drivers who they know, you know, they've got the skills that we need, etc. And it might be that between 2 or 3 groups we can come up with something that could work. And at least go and meet the guys at Uppingham and Rushton, who are all very keen to help out and act as sounding boards. But the interesting thing is they had answers to lots of the questions about licensing, insurance, driver clearance, etc. So you know, it's not as if we had to invent something from scratch.
I mean, all your drivers have to have a special, I forget the name of the
Well, there's Midas
There is a
qualifications,
different,
but again, there's 60 drivers with Midas who live in and around our work at the school. So there might be some time.
That's-
Two questions. One is who on this, in this group managed that initiative, and secondly, this initiative raised the thought of something like a community car, which might also help with parking. It would be something we would neither have to run North Finance, because where they run in other parts of the country, they're self-financing. I don't know if it's big enough, but I think that's something that also ought to be considered, not the answer to transport.
Absolutely. I'm happy to keep pushing it forward because I think at the moment I'm the chair of the transport group as well. And it's something that's, I think it's a really good idea and it could be a really useful service in Anglia. Whether we came up with a daily service like us, or something more ad hoc or somewhere in between, there's 2 really good models we could look at and at least start and see what we get to. But it might all depend on getting funding from North Northampton. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Yeah, David, I think it's a very good idea that's worth pursuing. The devil, of course, will be in the detail, but that's not a reason to, stop it at this stage. I think we've got to work out what that detail looks like. All I would add to what isn't in here already is that, again, when I was representing the town council at the Open Annual Business Association meeting, QVH. Curiously, and I didn't know this was coming up, 2 or maybe 3 people actually came and suggested a similar idea to me when we were talking about the traffic issues. And they said, well, why don't we have a community bus service? And the preference would be to run it, ideally 5 days a week, but if that isn't possible, a Thursday and a Saturday, for probably fairly obvious reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suggested Monday in here just because it's a good day to get people to and from the medical practice, perhaps. But again, it could be ad hoc. And the interesting situation about Uppingham and Rushton is that the vehicle, when it's not been used, is available for community usage volunteer action, or someone might want to use it for something. So you've got a facility to use it over extended periods as well. So are we all okay to
Sorry, the other thing that was suggested is that, and you've got something down here later on about what one might charge. The advice coming from this representative sample of 2 or 3 people I spoke to was that keep the costs as low as you can to try and encourage people to use it, certainly in the early stages.
That was my thinking of my £1 fare. But Uppingham seems to suggest that a lot of those from bus pass income. We could investigate how that.
Again, somebody mentioned about the idea of having bus passes, particularly for people of a certain age.
Anywhere over 54 million. Thank you.
Did you declare?
No, I'm not over 54 yet. I'm 54 still.
There have been a number of schemes over the last few years. There was a ring and ride scheme.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might just be a good idea to look at them, because it will give you an idea of the kind of cost. Because there are things that you don't think about until it's nearer the time, and that is where you're going to keep the vehicles. For instance, there are.
And then again, where the Uppingham and Rushden models are both interesting, because Uppingham are coming up to renew their vehicles at the moment. And there, do they get 1 or 2? Do they buy or lease, etc.?
Yeah,
Do they get
there's all
electrical
those.
petrol? And again, we don't need to agree with that. But there's also some of the ones a similar scheme down in Rushden as well as the Dial a Ride scheme. So do we need to take a vote on this? It's just a sort of broad proposal to continue.
Well, because we've got to receive the discussion paper, I would suggest that if you're happy, that you just say you agree to continue
And that's fine, because that's what I'm suggesting.
looking into the idea.
Yeah, so we're all happy with continuing.
I think we're essentially mandating you to carry it forward.
That's fine, that's all. You can keep garnering opinion from people.
I'll write that in.
Yeah. John, I'll get your help contacting someone soon. Thank you very much indeed. I'll report back as soon as possible. 22-174. Me again, I'm afraid, the discussion paper on business support. This came out of a conversation for our report from last month with a resident about all the empty shops in Oundle. Now, having walked around the town, I think all the empty shops have now been let, or have been redecorated, etc. And I had a really interesting conversation with someone that opened a new business only last week about ideas and so on and so forth. But there's a couple of ideas in here about how we could work with the markets more, which again came out of our time on the markets in February, and using QVH as a pop-up facility. And then the final one, which came out of the transport study actually, is the comment about how important we as a sort of local service centre to places within about 15 to 20 miles. Stilton was mentioned, but elsewhere coming medical practice perhaps, pharmacies, Waitrose, shops, co-op, etc. and markets as well, and whether we should try and really focus on that local advertising, if that makes sense, over the next few months. So again, any questions or queries or anything like that, Max?
Again, I'm being sound repetitive and I apologise for this, but again, at the meeting that I attended at QVH, 2 of the stallholders there, again, just so people know, this is organised by our Business Association, and various members of the association had stalls in QVH, and members of the public coming in and out. Well, anyway, 2 at least of the stallholders who were there, who I think can be characterised as young entrepreneur and home-based business, very much would like the idea of a pop-up store that they could use either in the market itself. We didn't discuss QVH because I hadn't really thought it through until I saw this paper, but QVH could be another alternative. But they were very much saying we would like something where it's relatively cheap for us to invest. We wouldn't necessarily want it week by week, but maybe once a month or whatever it might be. And they felt that if there was something available at an affordable price, others would come on board as well.
The conversation I had originally was this idea about people in exactly that situation, home-based businesses who just wanted the occasional ability to customer face and raise their profile. And you know, it was partly, we were in the QVH the other night, and it's a nice venue, and we want to use more, and it's dry. So, yeah, but
Funnily enough, later on tonight, we're going to look at the local plan part 2 modification consultation. And just looking at your paper reminded me of a paragraph in that which says, changes proposed to policy EN34 regarding the town centres of Oundle and elsewhere specify that development proposals should seek to, and I quote, increase local community interaction, increasing footfall to sustain and enhance vitality and viability. And it goes on, the plan refers to development opportunities being informed by the preparation of town strategies with site-specific details. If the NNC have in mind producing a town strategy, can we get ahead of the game and ask to engage with them now in actually preparing a town strategy? That town strategy could actually cross both the things that we've just been talking about, because they can feed off each other.
sure, again, that would also help give us some leverage towards some of that pedestrian, not pedestrian, but the sort of town realm improvements that you've suggested as well. That's a good idea. Who at MNC does town strategies?
That's what I don't know.
Because planning will say it's someone else, and someone else will say it's planning.
In that case, best approach would be to pull it up to Helen, and she'll send it down the right channel and then see.
John?
The question I have is, as I mentioned before, the resource. The last two things we talked about, this one, very good, a lot of work, because there are a lot of initiatives, a lot of paths to go down. The previous one about community transport, again, a lot of work, a lot of paths to go down. And I would rather do fewer things really, really well than a number of things unwell, if that's the right terminology. So my question at the end of all of that is, who would drive this particular initiative? Because if it's you again,
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
the other thing, how much time have you got
Some holiday
to
to
do this really well?
Always like some holiday. I've tried to sort of move towards the bottom, the last 4 points there. The Estates Committee and OTC staff can work with markets to an extent. And I think there's some easy wins there. I think when I was down on the market, some of the marketeers are quite keen to encourage and stuff. So that shouldn't be particularly hard, I don't think. The QVH, we can start looking towards how we do that over the next few months. And again, we've got the Business Association on side. I think working with them is good.
Good. Who's going to manage all of that? Because there are a lot of disparate work streams there, and
Yeah,
literally
but then
coordinated.
communications that's really pushing where we do advertise stuff, really. And the final one is to do the transport report, and it's what David said as well. Get the NNC councils or NNC to help us come up with that bigger strategy view. And so I think in the end, it's not a lot of extra work for us, it's just how we direct some of our existing.
One of my question, which is who's going to manage all of this to make sure all the streams are tied together, put together to make sure we get it in a coordinated fashion.
That might be in the next couple of weeks, I suppose.
The Oundle Business Association, that open day, that was for the home-based business, from what I gathered from Paul. So
There's more.
they've created that.
There were clearly more than home-based businesses there.
Were there?
Well, I don't think Ants is a home-based business.
But then,
Might be.
as well, that's sort of how it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
sold to me. But can't they continue?
Yeah,
Do a
I mean,
few
I was
more.
gonna- I think Ian was partly saying that in answer to John's important question, which is, we already have, I think, an open door with a OBA. So we have the asset of QVH. You know, we could trial a pop-up on the basis of the event that took place, 2-3 Saturdays ago, without too much trouble, I think.
I think there's a coming together of 2 or 3 as soon as you.
Yeah. I think it would be better to sort of push them into the QBH route rather than try and add them to the market, because
Absolutely.
it disrupts it if you've got people just, occasionally.
If I were doing it, and I'm not, given that we have QBH, and invariably it's not used on a Saturday, given that we have demand coming from OBA, I'd start trying to bash heads together and make it work.
The other point is there is some synergy here as well, is that we have our little minibus driving around every now and again. If it drops people at the marketplace and they walk up and have a coffee in the coffee shop and then go to the QBH and then picks them up and takes them home, we've saved park and we've encouraged, etc., etc. That's not going to happen overnight, but the point is, I think there's actually work in these in the same direction.
And if we could find some way, if you rightly say, as having coffee or cakes there as well, okay, that's another ask, but there are ways of doing that. The other group that could well be involved is what you might call the Arndell Creative Group that you have talked about in the past, because then they could advertise what's coming up and hopefully sell tickets for said events.
That would be ideal.
So I come back to a question which some of George did answer, which is, if we're going to have a further report on these initiatives, on this particular initiative, which is really a number of different initiatives, who's going to report back to council on this? Is it Emma? Is it the States? Is it you?
I will. Jim,
I'm happy to.
brilliant. Thank you.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I think we've got enough partnership that actually the load isn't that great. So I want to happily report back. So again, we're just receiving a paper, but are we okay that we start putting feelers out in these directions between now and the next meeting? Yep, is that general consensus? Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for your support.
Are you going to report back here or estates?
We can talk about the markets and estates, but I'll report back to.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you ask Lisa just to put that on next week's agenda? And we'll just
Put what on?
the sort of market point.
I think we're already
That's
working
fine.
on that
I
though,
thought we
because
were.
I think it was discussed, because I'm going to be meeting Morag down at the market this week, Thursday, to start speaking to the market traders.
22171 to receive the mayor's report. Sorry, it's a mark, I apologise. It's just the way it's come up. Most of it's fairly straightforward. North Street again, but I saw something in the paper that there's new authorities being requested by NNC that will allow them to deal with weight limits and stuff. So hopefully something will come through there. Huge thanks to Matt for the quiz last week. I've had lots and lots of very nice emails, including one from the High Sheriff of Gloucestershire only the last couple of days, saying what a lovely event it was to see community groups together, just enjoying the company to an extent. So particular thanks to the Arundel Business Association, who minimised the amount of beer I had to throw away. I worked very hard at the end of the evening to make sure there was very little beer to throw away, so thank you to them. And thanks in particular to all of those suppliers who gave us lots of lovely food and drink.
We should record thanks to you for the initiative, because it was a very good evening.
Not a problem, absolute pleasure. It was almost a delight. On the same thing, we've had a request from the Bowls Club to a charity bowls event on the 28th of May. I've only played bowls once or twice. I rather enjoyed it. I think I got told off for wearing the wrong shoes. But if anyone is keen to...
Got cricket spikes on.
I got told off. I just remember getting told off twice. If anyone is able to make the 28th of May, I don't know exactly what the times are, I can go back and find out, and that would be wonderful. Because it's a nice club, and it's nice for us to be seen, and talking of being seen. I had a meeting with the resident a couple of weeks ago, and it was about why let the council do work to look up potholes and clean this, that and the other. I pointed out we've done quite a lot. We reported the problem, it's now been solved. He's relatively happy about that, but would still like to see more councillors reporting more things. It comes back to, we don't have the authority to do it, but we all have fixed on the street on the phone that we can do, but also we can ask people to report it. And I'm not saying that NNC are brilliant at solving problems, but they do get around to solving them eventually. But the idea of visibility is important, I suppose. I don't know my name badge when I'm walking around town, but if we all just let people know what we're doing and that we're on the council and we're doing things, and that's good for us and good for them too. 22-17102, the clerk's report.
Yeah, it's a bit thin on the ground. I haven't got any crime figures or correspondence because Rebecca was on holiday and then I was on holiday before that, so.
No, it's all there. There's a report about the meeting you had with Land.
Yes, and that's on the agenda a little bit later because he did come back to me with a bit more information.
22-17103, a PDF of some of the slides for the annual town meeting, a week on Thursday. I've tried to embed the comments and ideas that people had last time. I've sort of changed the agenda around a little bit because it just seemed to work a little bit better. Just showing what we've done the last few years in just a quick couple of slides. The one with the cows on, that's a pop-up that's going to come up. It doesn't work on the PDF as well as I hoped, but it does. There's a picture of the new Snipe Meadow board that I still think is rather nice. A picture of the wall at St Peter's, and maybe a conversation about the pathway and the wreck. The awards that we've moved up a little bit, Paul King's, quite a large amount of his family are coming to help award. I think 4 or 5, maybe?
Yeah, I think there were, 4 or 5.
I put some finance detail in. The last 2 or 3 years, we've just put that spreadsheet of the stuff that's on the AA report. Is that one?
Yeah, on mine, I've got the trial balance stuck on the top of it.
I have. The only thing I thought about that is it worth putting 2 slides in? One of them just showing people that list of properties, so they get an idea of what our estates is, or is that too much detail?
For me, I'd be happy to put those in because they're our responsibility. People should know they're our responsibility. I really would avoid trial balance because that's way too much detail.
Yeah, so just the list.
Lines, just the properties.
Yeah, no, that's
And
absolutely
headline
fine.
fees.
Yeah,
The more
that's fine.
information you give out when people don't understand it, I'm happy to give information out, but there's a lack of understanding what it really means.
That's
Because
fine.
when Alex trying to explain trial
And the
balance,
staff structure, I've sent you the
I've got
update.
the correct one, yeah, this is just coronation grants, they're just pictures of the groups that we've given funds to. And I've mentioned the total funds balance just as a reminder that we have clients every year. Fletenfield, I've got 3 slides, I think, now from Paul to put in about that, and he's going to speak briefly about that, including hopefully a spelling mistake there, that's pretty terrible. I've tried to summarise the transport study as quickly and punchily but accurately as possible. There's the one about the data, which is just data, we don't need to talk all the way through it. There's the short and medium term wins. There's a map talking about the 20-mile-an-hour suggestions. There's an area about public realms and people can have their view. There's a screenshot of the consultation. And then there's the thing I got for the OVA presentation here. I've now got an 80 one from Rebecca, just showing the heat map, if you want, of which of them, the ones that people liked and didn't like as well. And the numbers have gone up and down a little bit. But again, that seemed the most effective way of showing the ones that have the most support or not support, as it were. And again, just making the point, as we stressed at the time, that these are ideas, they're not recommendations, and there's nothing we can do to necessarily put them in action. And then something about the next step, which is putting it together and giving it to NNC. Something from Tony Hoyle, the Park Warden.
Yeah, I think he'll just stand up and speak.
That's fine.
I think,
I'll just put his name on the board. Helen Harrison's coming, and so I'll put her towards the end because that seems a nice way of ending. And then just an advert for the food festival and a picture of Max doing a quiz. And then the video from Love Animals and Eric will show it again because it's nice to remind people we live somewhere nice. And that's it with any Q&As. Hopefully it's mainly picture driven rather than text driven. I'll speak off the slide for a minute or 2 in each and just crack on. That's the plan. Any additions or changes that people would want? I'll make that finance change.
You know that
just
others,
say-
where you've got others, Are you going to take that out?
Yes. Yeah, that was just a slide to remind me to do so.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's a work in progress.
You said in the beginning, the anti-penultimate report is looking back. Where is that looking back?
That's what I've moved forward to the start. It seemed incongruous to me to talk about what we're going to do and then say it. So I put what we did at the start. So that's that slide. And then the next couple as well.
So it just needs changing.
So the agenda is going to be changed. It's Rebecca.
No, we've sent it out.
You sent it out. That's
But
fine.
I think we did change it.
Yeah, I sent it through this morning, yesterday, not the two.
Um,
But we said in the original mail that the agenda could be. So the subjects are all there in some way, shape or form.
The proofreading for long enough that if you can't check these things often enough, especially if you're going out.
Lovely. That's approved.
so
We need to
you,
vote on that.
are you all happy with that?
Yeah, everyone okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant,
That's fine.
thank you very much indeed. 22-17104, to consider a request from the co-op to arrange for CCTV to be installed in the co-op car park and approved to pay half the cost. I didn't see any paperwork.
I didn't have any.
There isn't any.
That's fine.
So,
What's in your left?
I'll cover this and the next one. So when I was working at the co-op, my deputy manager had an idea of installing CCTV in the car park that they would be willing to pay half of, and that Allen Town Council paid the other half of. Now, recently we've had I don't know what the right word, not discussion or a case, but a situation with Ambrose School where they were questioning who gets access to CCTV, and it is the police. Now, the co-op are quite happy that they don't get a view, if you like, of this CCTV. They don't mind that, as long as the police do. So yeah, they would like to propose, in theory, for now, that our town council pay half of CCC, then they can't pay the other half.
Can I ask why, what do they want it for?
Yeah.
So recently there have been
Yeah.
so it's a good question. In recent months, there have been a series of crimes committed in the car park. One being, at least one being a catalytic converter theft, and there has been a spate of those recently. And one of them was extremely obviously committed in basically broad daylight. And any CCTV in the car park would have picked that up quite easily, apparently.
Is
Yeah.
it a rare occurrence, or is it a really regular thing? Is it a high crime?
No, it's not a high crime area, it's not, but then I get arrows generally anyway.
I think catalytic converters are going more.
Everywhere.
That
Yeah, they
is
are.
happening quite a bit. Wow.
And David might know the answer to this. It's private property, the car park. It's
So-
nice of the to us,
Yeah,
but I don't know how that squares up with the police.
Yeah.
And whether they would be able to have access to it. I don't know, do you know?
I don't really know.
My understanding is GDPR regulations cover everything, and if public space, private space, if you record it, you've got to tell people you're recording it.
yeah,
And then
Then you're all,
your data officer can look at it, but no one else can. And the police can look at it whenever they want.
exactly,
And that's it.
exactly.
yeah, I mean, the only reason I'm asking is because somebody Bright Spark might argue about the legality of,
Yeah, well, this is why,
because we'll be recording people
yeah,
like the school children.
Sure, yeah. John?
The other question is, again, given the recent experience we had, we talked about it at the finance meeting, I hope any proposal will cover not just the capital costs, but ongoing maintenance costs, as well as the GDPR data protection issues. We
Yeah,
haven't seen anything, so we've got no idea what.
yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
So when we get it, capital costs, maintenance costs, and GDPR data protection.
Would we consider this as an extension of the current CCTV we've got in the town centre? So we would use that company that we use at the moment and say, how much would it be to have cameras in the car park? And then however much that is, the co-op will offer to pay 50%.
Yeah.
Is that how it would work? Or would the co-op be?
I thought the original suggestion was that they wanted to put them on the building, wasn't it? But that was a couple of months ago. It's
Yeah,
obviously changed.
yeah.
So then we would be responsible for installation of post,
Yes.
power, etc., which would be costly.
Exactly.
Thanks.
I don't have any objection to it in principle, but I think it's a little difficult for us to agree until we actually get a proposal in writing from the co-op.
Yeah.
With some costs and everything else involved.
I'm
I'm happy to accept Jamie's proposal in principle, but it's difficult to know what we're signing up to until we see that paperwork.
And so who would have the access to the cameras then?
the police and
But it would have to be recorded.
Well, currently, yeah, because currently what happens is we've got all of our CCTV. If there's an incident, the police come to us, we get the box, we download whatever it was, and then we send it to them. So who would do that bit?
I assume the co-op, but
Yeah.
again, we need,
Well, I think
that's why
I
we
think
need the
that's.
proposal.
I think their idea was that they would do that. I think we went back with some questions. I think they said we did that.
We're guessing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we need a proposal in writing.
Yeah, from the co-op.
Quite apart from getting that, which I think we must do, there's no harm in our making inquiries with our own current supplier about the costs that would be associated with doing it. I mean, one obvious place that we could mount it on that belongs to us is the toilet block. Which probably will be able to cover just exactly the same sort of areas as would be covered with anything mounted on the co-op building itself. So there's no harm in finding out what those costs are. You
Yeah.
can also ask the co-op about what their proposal is. We could then go back to them potentially and say, well, we've made inquiries, and just see where it takes us. So at least that way we've got two strands going.
So if we can ask the co-op. So we can ask the co-op.
I can ask them, yeah.
You can be the conduit.
Yeah,
Co-op conduit. And maybe ask our existing suppliers to come up with a proposal.
Just so we're clear, you have to understand that they view it as, oh, you're on the council, can you do this? Can you sort that out? And then they consider that done.
They come up with nothing more.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. 22-17105, to consider requesting the air ambulance to move their donation bin to the car park. Yes, your turn now.
So there is a donation bin. It's quite large, it's metal. It's by the football club. I would like that moved from the football club to the co-op car park. Where in the co-op car park is an issue, because it could well be parking spaces, if it's parking spaces, if it's not parking spaces, if it's under the eaves where there's some new parcel type drop-off points, then that on land, that actual bit of land, I think, is owned by the co-op. You see, so it's rather, so I'm merely coming to you first asking, in theory, if this would be okay. Please.
Why are you asking for it? to be-
Okay, so two reasons. One is that originally it was put at the football club because the former manager knew someone who worked at the football club. So it was just somewhere to put it. Apparently, Waytrade and Co-op said no, originally. Now, I personally think somewhere like the Co-op would be a much more obvious place to have a donation point like that. And it would actually make, although you're not here to do that, it would make my life a lot easier in terms of getting the donation from the bin. Now has it being placed underneath the eaves also, that it is at times of the year prone to, from what I've been told, prone to not necessarily leakage, but ice and things like that inside. So it's a double preventative thing in terms of keeping the donations secure, but also hopefully making it easier for people to donate.
Any thoughts or? Well, my first thought was I had no idea there was one at the
Well, I-
football club.
I've written that from
Clearly, it is far more high profile
Yeah,
than we
yeah,
would
exactly.
suggest, and in principle, I've absolutely no problem with it. I think, again, a bit like the last one, I'd like to sort of see a little bit more detail in terms of
Sure.
how big is this thing, where exactly you're
Yeah.
proposing to put it.
Okay.
But fairly big, really, aren't
They can be quite.
To the extent it's a council matter, what makes it a council matter unless we're going to keep a car parking spaces up? Why is it a council matter?
Because it's our car park.
Yeah.
So, but we would need to talk to Co-op, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, because they lease the car park from us, so it's not really, we would have to then ask them if they're okay with it going in the car park.
From Co-op's point of view, they are okay with it.
The other problem is I think we would definitely not have to lose the car park.
No, I think it
see
could,
this,
yeah.
this is again. See this.
So maybe between now and next meeting, if you can find a place that's lovely and ready for it, come back and tell us where that is.
Okay.
I don't know where that.
Okay.
What about the concrete?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Oh, on concrete.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
22-17106 can reconsider the quote to install a 20-foot container in Amps car park. There's a number of prices. This is to store all of our gubbins that sits in Mr. Amps's.
Yeah, this went to estates and then it came back here because I think, I can't remember why.
There was a planning issue, didn't
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, but then there is
yeah.
no planning, yeah.
So it has now said he doesn't think it needs planning, and there's loads of complaints down there, all of which are insulated. Why not get hot on the side? They're insulated, so they're very nice. So there's a new container and a used container, which has 12-month wind and watertight guarantee, and it's basically put plastic.
The,
Doesn't need to be that waterproof.
I've had the Cleveland company have come back and the quote is slightly cheaper. It's not a lot cheaper, but for a new one. The only thing about that one is they provided the one that's currently there as well, that Philip Amp bought from them. So they are,
A reliable supply.
and they know the site and they've been
So
there.
is that cheaper for both new and used?
It's just the new. The new is cheaper by about 100 quid. So it's not massive, but it is new.
Thoughts, David?
Can you remind us what we actually agreed before? Because I know we did agree something,
We
but
did agree.
Well,
What was
we
it?
didn't.
We
We
sort of agreed that we needed to know about planning.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now we think we don't need planning because Philip's got 4 of them in his car park.
Yeah.
So it's in a conservation zone, but they're mobile. So that's sort of where we came back from.
Yeah, the new one is 2,600. So that it comes in cheaper than the new one from the other company, but obviously the other company's got the situation with the
And we're basically
Used one.
storing the external barriers and fencing and stuff. that's
yeah,
all
and I mean, but
listed
potentially if
in.
there's a bit more space in it, we might need,
We'll soon find something.
I'm sure we can find something to store it.
Is this the car park?
Yeah, it's his
Or is
car
that-
park, yeah.
Yeah, not.
At the moment, he has stuff stored around the place that ours
Yeah,
and we use, and other groups use for town events, etc.
it's not a huge amount to go in, so I'm quite happy to propose we should.
And seconded, if I know what I'm
From,
saying.
from the same
If I know what
supplier.
I'm saying.
This is-
So at the moment, we've got a new one at 2,750, a second-hand one at 1,750, and the people at the supplier Phillips with his ones will do a new one at 2,600.
Yeah.
This is the one I'm suggesting.
That's the one I.
The
wanted to
Cleveland.
say. I'll second it.
They're very shiny. Just on the basis, do we have a proposed container budget?
No, we don't have any budget for this at all.
So where's
It could potentially, I mean, we do have signs and that sort of thing, that budget. I'm just going to have a look and see how much there is in
Yeah,
there.
we have a budget for buying them.
And what's Cleveland's delivery cost?
At 500, it's cheaper than
So
this
it's
one.
only goes to you, is what I'm getting. So we're actually £250 off the deal for a new one.
Yeah.
We're going to be using it for
Um, I'm sure we could find a budget.
So we've got a proposer and a seconder. We've talked about this a few times. There seems to be a need. And
Do you not need to agree the budget before we have a vote, or are we saying we'll find a budget somewhere, just?
we're going to find a budget that's going to
Let me-
because it came out of last year's plan.
Let me have a look.
Or we can wait until we find a budget for next year. David?
No, I mean, A,
Or you
probably a small underspend, and
I
B,
mean,
it's
there
such a
must be a
small amount to
budget for the
take from
building that we
reserves.
didn't put up to store stuff in the first place.
Where is it stored?
That's not the budget though.
That's Trump, is that?
It's stored
But
next
in,
to
way,
our-
but in ways that
Outside?
he isn't particularly happy with.
Yeah, which is why he's quite keen for us to get this.
Okay.
So I think given the amount and given the fact we talked about it for a few months, we can find it somewhere. We've got the money in the rec budget, I'm sure, from something we haven't done yet. So let's say it comes out of the.
Right, let me have a look. Did you want to talk about something else and then we'll come back to it?
Of course. 22-17107 to consider concerns from a resident regarding the replacement bench in Springfield Guard. This is the bench that we approved last month or the month before, last recycled bench, presentation. We've got the bench, and now we've had this suggestion that it's a site of antisocial activity and we should not put a bench in. To summarise, it's quite a strong view about how antisocial these group of children are. We made contact with the local community support officer who says, I think he's sort of aware of them, but he hasn't had any reported problems there. The resident said she's reported to the police. It's 6 to 1.5, doesn't it? It sounds to me like the kids are the issue, not the bench. There are also comments about the garden not being looked after. I walked through past it last Tuesday from here, and it looks in good order. The trees have been pruned, the grass has been cut, so I'm not sure that's a problem. And the other point is, previously it was a bit of a wasteland that I think probably encouraged antisocial behaviour more. So the question is, do we go ahead with a replacement bench, and do we engage with this resident as to our reasoning, I suppose? Any thoughts, David?
Have we made Ted Sullivan aware of this? Because I think it was Ted who came and spoke to us.
I believe he's been in contact with Lisa yesterday, maybe, about picking the bench up or getting it down there. And she said, we're just discussing it tonight. So I think the old bench has gone. It was certainly not there last Tuesday. So either they've taken it away or the kids have sold it. I'm suggesting it's been taken away because it's very neat and tidy. Okay.
The kids' problem, these things are usually transitory. And if there's an antisocial issue going on down there, sooner or later the police will get on top of it. It is no reason to not go ahead with what we planned, and I think we should just get on and do it.
I probably agree. I think the other problem is that there has been the last few months a small group of youngsters around the place, and they've been
Yeah.
a mobile problem. So this bench won't change that in any shape or form.
it's quite likely that now that the evenings are getting lighter, that people will be if they are really working on it, which seems to be spasmodic, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, they're also hoping to,
The kids might not bother
encourage-
for a bit.
yeah,
Why don't we just delay a few weeks before we install it so as not to seem to be rewarding bad behaviour, and we just let them get bored and push off?
I'd go with your earlier comment and ask that maybe the PCSO is visible once or twice a week.
We've certainly raised it with him already.
yeah, I spoke to Archer. I mean, he said that he has sort of patrolled past that area, and yes, there has, been a little bit of drinking going on, and so some few empty cans. But having, I think Ted was saying that, I mean, it was a derelict piece of land
Yeah.
before, and it now, and although they'll get the occasional bit where somebody might pull a plant out or whatever, on the whole, it's been okay.
I certainly cycle past it
Yeah,
every night at some stage, and I've never seen any problems, but I'm going past quite late.
and it's not been a sort of it's not been something that's been raised with us before, that there is a major problem.
Certainly I walk down there delivering
Yeah.
gas, there's never been an issue.
I mean, the bench is, I think that bench was in need of replacement anyway. So it was almost like a sitting target to be pushed about a bit, but hopefully this one, and I think even if there isn't anything there, they will still congregate there.
So, yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's possible that it's more likely they will be vandalising if their thing is already in disrepair. It's a zero tolerance policy. If you have broken windows and unbroken windows, it's making a difference. If you've got a ruined bench and kids are there and bored, they will make hay.
So the general view of the meeting is we crack on. I'm happy if the resident's not happy to, if she wants to get in contact with me, I can go and say
Okay.
hi,
Mhm.
and just explain our thinking.
Mhm.
Show the video, but yeah, I think we should continue,
Yeah.
but keep talking, keep checking with.
With police, yeah.
22-17108, consider response, sorry.
Do you just want to go back
Yes,
to?
so back to the.
Right, now I think, because of what we will be storing, are the barriers and things that we use for Christmas markets, we'll be using for the food festival. And all of that funding comes and Christmas lights comes under our tourism budget, and there's 26,000 in there. And in the last, just lost it, I've just scrolled away from it. We have an underspend, and we've had a significant underspend. So I would say that would be the budget that I would put that
I would seem sensible,
under.
because it's exactly, it comes back to our town centre strategy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a proposer, David, second of Val, to get the new container from the suppliers that councils use, because they're cheaper for a new one and cheaper on delivery and then at the site. We have a proposer, a second, we're going to vote on that. Great. Thank you very much indeed. To consider response to public spaces protection orders pre-consultation questionnaire. I got slightly confused about this because I thought North Northants don't have any land in and around Amble, apart from Blackfield. But on looking on their website, it looks like some of the dog-based orders do actually apply to some places in Amble, which is a slightly eclectic list. Amble Cemetery and Churchyard, Amble Marketplace, Amble Occupation Road and surrounding sports areas.
203 of those are owned by us.
And the cemetery and churchyard, I'm not sure if they mean all around St Peter's or the cemetery and the churchyard are separate places. They've got a weird no capital letter involved. So that's on the NNC website. So it does apply to some of our property at the moment. And it basically is talking about dogs, dog feces, as I understand. Do we have strong views on wanting to?
I think it's also keeping dogs out of play areas. I think because Barnwell has already got that, hasn't it?
Has it?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is that this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, is the signage good in these places which says no dogs allowed?
I think so. I think they have to, because I remember when it came, I remember when that one came in before, that was a few years ago, where they, I think it was NCC that said that they were, all of their play areas, within their country parks, they were going to have no dogs allowed.
The problem is it's actually policing it, isn't it? You can have all the signs up that you like, but if people just ignore it,
Yeah,
unless there's somebody managing it, how do you control it?
Isn't there somewhere in here that they're going to find somebody to do that? Isn't there?
Well, it's a pre-questionnaire, isn't it? So it's hard to know exactly what their suggestion is. David?
On a purely practical basis, can anybody think of anything that they might decide to do that they'd be very unhappy with? And the short answer is I don't think that there is anything they could do that we would end up being unhappy with. So, from my point of view, I'm not sure I'm that bothered about responding. Let them just do whatever they think is appropriate.
I think that's probably a fair thing. It's
Mm.
there's no significant change at the moment, and the general theory is what covers quite a lot of animal that we may not even be aware of in yet. So I'm quite happy just to go with that approach.
Yeah.
Rightio. So we don't want to respond to the pre-consultation questionnaire, but we might respond to the questionnaire later.
yeah.
To consider a response to the Gypsy and Traveller local plan scope and options consultation, which I tried to look at, and I couldn't get the link to that. David?
I haven't managed to look at it. This came in the day after our planning meeting. Seems to me that if it fits anywhere, it fits with the planning brief. There is time after the next planning meeting to put in a response if we think it's appropriate. I suggest we just refer this to the next planning meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Seconded.
Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Lovely. 22-171-10, to receive an invitation for East Northants Lab event and consider who will attend. Rupert and I sort of attended one back here in December. This is a different sort of one, but it's next Monday. Fortunately, I'm working next Monday morning. Well, I'm in the classroom, so I'm there now. Does anybody, sorry, my pupils don't think that. Does anybody desperately want to attend either that event or can it attend?
I'm not available.
No, it's not very timely, I'm afraid.
I'm here, so I could.
Thanks very much. It's nice that they're using us as a.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So does East Northampton still
Emma's-
exist then?
Emma's point. What they've done is they've come up with the local area partnership for the rural East Northampton chapter.
So it's that one.
Yes, even though it sounds like it's East Northampton, it's not East Northampton, it's East Northampton. Yeah.
I could go part of that if it was helpful.
And would that be helpful or are you okay?
So,
John can cover a bit of it.
oh yeah, come along, yeah. Mhm.
It would be nice, I got the impression, the one I attended in December, that they said, here's a great idea, it's new, it's fantastic, it's wonderful, it's very much up to you what you make of it. They said, well, what can we do with it? I said, well, that's up to you. I said, do we have decision-making power? I said, no, you're not ready, it's up to you. Do you have any money? No, it's up to you. Thanks.
I have heard from other areas that it's almost like this, JAG meetings are still happening and other meetings are still happening. And now this is happening. But like you said, this particular, they just talk and
Yeah,
everything, they just talk about things. So,
there was a lot of talk about community transport being a
Yeah.
big issue in the area. What's the solution? Wow, come up with one. So it might be that there are more.
Yeah.
22-171-11 to receive a report regarding Rich Stream Town Council land following a meeting with land and property registration. This is over a number of sites, little ones, big ones, medium ones, and just making sure things are registered. Total cost about £1,000. If my maths is correct, given registration problems that are perfect at the moment, that would be probably money quite well spent perhaps. Did they ask to meet us or did we ask?
Yeah,
them?
it's through, some time ago, there was something in one of the NCALC updates, and he approached us because he's been working with Earthenborough Town Council, had some time ago been working with Higham Ferrers, is now working with Rushden, and a few others, I think Daventry and somewhere out that way. But what they will do, what they will help, he's already been through and help us register, and he's also found the statutory instrument list that says what was handed over, what was at Oundle Urban District Council, went to East Northants and then was given to us. And then they'll map it as well, and because they use Pear technology, we will just feed it into our map. Although I was a bit sceptical to start with, it's quite useful. Yeah.
David?
Yeah, it seems to make sense to me. And I'm pretty sure that we found that statutory instrument when we were looking at a certain piece of land.
Yeah, Lisa's got a sort of hard copy. It looks like a photocopy of a hard copy from somebody at East Northants. This is, I've been on the website and seen this. It's the same thing, yeah, that list. Because I still believe in that list. It tells you that we were given that piece of land.
Yes.
So it sounds like a sensible thing to do. It clears up uncertainty, which is always good. And the NCALC view of the last couple of monthly reports has been that it's good time to do it now rather than later. So I'm happy to propose that we accept the findings of the report.
And continue with it, yeah.
Continue with it. Is anyone willing to second that? John will second it. We're okay to vote on that. Thank you very much indeed. 22-17201 to approve the bank reconciliation balance sheet budget for March 2023. Any questions or queries on any of those? So I'm happy to propose that we approve that. Anyone willing to second it? John's willing to second it. Everyone okay to vote on that? Thank you very much indeed. Payments, item 22-17202, scheduled payments for March 23 as presented are paid. My declaring question, which I think might be a typo, but it could be me being stupid, is everything is paymented on March the 20th. But that's should
I
be
think
April,
it means April.
because the grant decision is really taken on the 11th of April, so unless there was some precedent. So I presume that with that knowledge in mind, it should be April the 20th. I'm happy to propose, unless there's any questions or queries on them. I'm happy to propose, John, you can second. So with that caveat about being April the 20th or March 20th, are we okay to vote on that? I just looked so much, that's weird. Sorry, are we okay to vote on the payments being made? Lisa, Max, James, all right? Yep.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Sorry, could you just tell me the proposal and second? You proposed?
I propose it, John seconded it.
Thank you.
22-17203, approved membership for Northants Count. This is about £2,600. It's an annual amount based on the size of our electorate. So it's probably going to be a little bit more next year and a bit more the year after. But clearly we use them quite regularly. We refer to them, they point us in the right direction quite well. It seems like a
You don't
no-brainer.
get our training through then. I mean, I know you can still do the training, but it costs you more money.
It seems like a
I
no-brainer.
propose.
I'm happy to second it. Are we all going to vote on it? Lovely, thank you very much indeed. 22-17204, approved membership to Institute of Cemetery and Crematorium Management. Good news on this is that we all become crematorium technicians at a cheaper rate than normal, which is my retirement plan set out already. Having said that, we've already turned to them for some advice about the cemetery, which is something we need to keep in mind with maybe 4 years growth left in there at the moment. And for £95 a year, it seems to have paid its way already because they've been very, very helpful so far.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to propose that we approve that membership. Anyone's willing to second it? Anyone's willing to second it? We all okay to vote? Thank you very much. To receive the minutes from the Finance and General Purposes Committee, 22-17205, from the 11th of April, reference grants. We haven't approved the minutes, we haven't done a meeting, but it just referenced the grants and the decision we made last Tuesday. Any questions or queries from it at all? Lovely. 22173 Highways Matters, to receive notification from Northants Highways of the proposed 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on Codstock Road, which I drove through yesterday, because it's been up for a couple of weeks now.
Was it?
Yes, and I think it was a condition of planning being put forward on the Codstock Meadows 2 or 3 years ago. So it's nice that they're asking to get their thoughts on it now. Signs already been moved, places in.
So I mean, extending it.
I mean, extending it to where it is at the moment. Yes. So,
Okay, so that's to.
we could ask them to move it back, I
£10
suppose,
off.
that's it. Is this the way it normally works? or-
I don't know.
Because
No,
apparently this
in
committee-
theory, if they're going to notify you of it, they were telling you in advance of an intention to do it, and maybe possibly even asking if we're happy with it.
That's all it
It
is.
seems to have already happened.
Yeah.
But as you say, this is part of the planning commission.
So it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
what
think
they
where the
closed,
entrance to that site is, they go along need to do that.
Yeah.
and they closed the road for 2 weeks to do it. So there we go. So we've received it. I presume
Yeah.
they asked for our opinion. It seems a little bit pointless now. 2217302 to receive a letter from a resident regarding the transport study. This is regarding Herne Road, and it is pleasant to start with. It says you shouldn't turn Herne Road to anything, but I think the chances of Herne Road ever being turned into anything will be after I've given up my career as a crematorium technician. I'm happy to write back to them and say it's a suggestion that was put in the report, but we don't think it's likely to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I just thanked them for their letter and invited them to the annual town meeting. But if you want to go back on that particular thing, I'll send you the.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll do that. 22174 planning matters. Receive the minutes of the planning committee on the 4th of April 2023. David, anything? GC assignment?
Back where we go, I'm just trying to refresh my memory, but as I am trying to do that, I can see John, you've got a question.
Yeah, is this where I declare an interest in the planning thinker? Because I see one of the decisions that the planning committee made, 2292/0103, relates to my house.
From
A planning application that has nothing to do with me.
I see.
So
Interesting.
you've refused the planning application, which I'm delighted by you. But so I'm declaring an interest in that because it will come back in the revised form. But that particular planning application should be taken out. I have no idea how to do it. Is that something I tell you, or is that something I sort out myself?
I'm somewhat mystified. When I do these things, I always look at the name of the applicant. I'm pretty sure that if I noticed it was your name, I know a bell may have rung. And so I don't think
It's not in my
Indeed.
name. It's not in my name.
When it came up, because I looked at the address and thought, that's John's house.
Yes.
Oh, right.
But actually, it clearly isn't.
Which
I don't know
It's
whether
not
your
in
house
my
is.
house.
It's two doors down.
No, it's my house. It's my house.
Maybe the wrong
The
numbers.
previous, no, it's my
Ah.
house. The previous owner put in a planning application which refused, and the other people around him apparently quote went fell. So I don't know why this is still going, because it should have been withdrawn. I don't know the mechanism for doing it, but I thought declare an interest, because if I don't,
Yeah.
and when it comes back in a revised form.
So what-
It's good interest.
So,
What
Good
planning
declaration.
application was that?
Which one is?
Which one was it?
Which number?
3 Benefield Court.
Oh, yeah, I've got, yeah.
I looked at that, and went, that's my bloody house. Who's doing that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I remember.
this was the one that had some updated plans and we were being asked to.
That was the
Yeah.
windows on the side.
Yeah.
Windows on the
I
side.
remember.
Which were just obscure windows, which didn't meet any of our objections in the first place. But now I'm even more baffled. But anyway, thanks for letting us know.
Legally,
You
you
can
can
put
apply for
planning in it.
planning for any property.
Yes, you can, but you don't have to fill in on the application for you're not the landowner, etc. And it would notify them.
It'll come back in the revised form.
Well,
Take it off.
no, you completely throw it. I forgot to look at it.
Well, the rest of it was exciting.
Relatively unexciting, if I remember. I mean, it was just the
Is that why
usual
the meeting's
succession
going on
of,
so well?
yeah, it's the usual type of applications that we dealt with as per normal. As you will see, at the end of it, we received the East Northants Local Plan Part 2 proposed modifications consultation and decided that the best way of doing it is to postpone it to today. That was at least because the document itself is 110 pages long, and nobody, myself included, had much opportunity to look at it. Which is the second item under planning, which is the document I circulated to everybody except Rita, because for some reason or another your email bounced back at me and I don't know why. So I don't think you've got a copy of this.
I'll forward it to you.
So that's very odd.
I'll forward it to you now.
After I'd submitted it, I had, I think, David Fuller acknowledged it, Rupert asked a comment on it, Val agreed with Rupert. But what I haven't actually managed to do, just because of time as much as anything else, is actually do anything as a result of what Rupert suggested. The document is sort of incredibly detailed. It's 110 pages of changes to the original local plan part 2. Some of the changes are amazingly minor, like swapping one word for another, which seem to mean almost exactly the same thing, and others are much more significant, all of which are the product of the public examination process with the inspector. So, going through it, there are various sections that are specific to Andor, which I think I've managed to deal with in here, and some more general points which apply as much to here as anywhere else. One of the key things about the document was that it proposed the allocation of 3 sites for development. One of them was a site off Cotterstock Road, which has already got planning permission now and is under development. The other, another was off St Christopher's Drive, which has already got planning permission but is not yet under development. And the third is Stoke Doyle Road, which has already seen about 4 iterations of the planning application, none of which we've liked. This isn't about sort of altering the substance of the thing, because actually what this is looking at is, do we like the wording of the modification? And in that context, there are only 2 or 3 things that kind of stuck out to my mind. One of them was an apparently slightly different way of treating the wording between the Stoke Doyle Road site and the Cotterstock Road site as regards an existing foul drainage provision. And I just can't quite see why they're not the same. Because if the issue is the same, we don't see why the wording wasn't quite the same. But in terms of what they were proposing, there was nothing that we're going to get excited about. There are some changes around town centre points, but I've kind of set them all out. I mentioned that in a different context earlier. But again, I wouldn't have thought that there was anything really in that would get us desperately excited. There's then a bit that talks about Andor having 4 spatial areas. Slightly bizarrely, the original definition of the kind of historic core of Andor said that it was West Street and North Street, and sort of failed to mention the fact that the marketplace was in between the 2 of them. Strangely, that's been picked up on, and now that's part of the historic core. But I thought one of the things that was interesting was reference to the Longstay car park off East Road. That, of course, used to be owned by East Northants. When they were struggling around for money, they decided that that was one of the assets that they could divest themselves of. It was sold to a pension fund, but we have a long lease over it. I say a long lease, it's a 15-year lease, but it's
Hurtling.
probably at least halfway through by now. And in the document, it states, quotes, in the short, medium term, OTC has taken over the lease of the East Road car park, which is not quite the right way of putting it. We didn't take over a lease, we were granted the lease, there wasn't a lease. And is keen to retain this as an asset for the town. And I would suggest that that's not strong enough, because there ought to be specific reference to the lack of car parking provision in the town, and the fact that this is an essential vital part of it. And the other bits dealt with the riverside, and again I included them in the notes because I thought it was interesting and useful for us to know. But in terms of actually responding to the consultation, I would suggest that it's probably the 2 points that I've highlighted that specifically we might want to go back and say something about, and I'm particularly keen to do it with the car park. But it may be that others, having looked at my paper, or even better still actually ploughed their way through that document, have other views or other comments. So if anybody thinks we should be commenting on anything else with it, by all means let me know. Otherwise, my plan was to put something very quick together and get Lisa to send it off, because the response date is close of play on Friday.
So a couple of questions from there. I thought that Barnwell, the Andrew Marine platform and the Riverside is not within the bounds of Ambridge's town council responsibility.
They're not.
So is any comment we make simply in reference to its implications for the town, or?
They recognise quite properly within the document that the built-up area of Oundle extends beyond the Oundle parish boundary. There are two notable examples of that either side of the new development. Baxton Drive, which was built on the old Avon reclaim site by the old station, is technically in Ashton parish because it's alongside, as it were, the bridge. I doubt there's a resident in there, or at least there might be one in there, but most residents in there would assume they live in Oundle. And I would have thought 99% of other people would say they live in Oundle. The same is probably true of Old Farm Close. As you go out of Oundle towards Gladthorne, on your right there's a new development. It immediately abuts the previous built-up area of the town, but that is actually technically in Gladthorne parish. Nobody in ENC, it seems to have ever understood the meaning of the word coalescence, because we're supposed to not have coalescence.
And it
Towns
says
and
that in the
neighbouring villages, and
document.
it says that in the document. Those two are good examples of coalescence. It shouldn't have happened, and logically, because it's terribly controversial every time I say it, these areas should be, when there is another boundary change, incorporated into Oundle. But the big issue is going to come with the wonderful new development of Cottesthorpe Road. The document recognises that roughly 50% of that development site is in the parish of Gladthorne. Both this town council and Gladthorne Parish Council both made all sorts of points about this. Gladthorne's view being that they had an adopted neighbourhood plan that made allocations for housing which did not include that site. And on that basis, they said there shouldn't be any building in that part of the site. Needless to say, that did not prevail. What would the neighbourhood plan remind us? This council made a point that said, if you're going to develop it, you need to try and ensure that where the boundary between the two parishes lies is clear. It's actually so clear that the parish boundary goes through two properties, part of the property lying in the parish of Almswood and part in the parish of Blackpool.
One of them goes through the kitchen and diner. So we've got a table in
Wow.
one and then your kitchen
Now,
office in the other.
as to who gets the precept, or whether the precept gets apportioned in some way, goodness only knows. But that is a major issue. Blackthorn happens to have its annual parish meeting one night, and inevitably, I have a feeling I may be speaking at that, wherein my other councillor had, because it doesn't. I mean, the whole thing made a nonsense of Blackthorn neighbourhood plan, but it raises all sorts of issues that are not being properly addressed, and that, of course, is going to be one of them. But when you read this document and you see what it says in relation to the villages, there's a lot of emphasis on what the neighbourhood plan says. And there's all sorts of bits in there that if you applied them, you wouldn't have actually allocated the site or indeed granted it planning permission. But the whole thing is so illogical that that's exactly what this plan does. Of course, it's a plan which is already they're planning to replace, because we've already had the first sort of consultation on the replacement of this plan. I can only hope they make a better job of the next one. But in terms of what we've got to look at this evening, whilst one could probably spend hours going through aspects of it, and there are generalised aspects which we might, in some respects, take issue with, it just struck me that it was going to be so difficult to come to any kind of a view about whether this sentence should read this way or that way in some of the document, and I just decided to produce what I did.
The other point, I suppose, is that the sentence changes are normally the ones that the examiner has suggested. So,
Well, clearly, as I say, they're all in response to points made by the examiner. So again, it's difficult to see that you could achieve much more than almost tweaking, which is why I think that if we are going to put in a response, rather than, in a sense, a response being as big as that, a very targeted one that says what you say in relation to this car park area is simply not robust enough, and you should add this in. I think there's a reasonable chance that you might even pick up on that and be prepared to include it. That might be useful because within the plan period or thereabouts, that lease is going to run out. The document talks about that being a brownfield site where potentially there might be prospects for development. As I said, what kind? It talks about prospects for development, and it talks about, in effect, development strategies being drawn up, which again links to what I was saying earlier. But I think if we put down a marker now, that needs to remain, because if we lose that car park, it's going to have a huge impact on the centre of the town.
Rupert, just we're pushing for time now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quite frankly, I see no merit whatsoever in the light of day. It's very helpful analysis in our trying to go through it line by line and clause by clause. We're not the House of Commons in the old days. So I strongly support David's view, and in fact move that we give David delegated authority to put in a targeted response and copy it around for all of us. Including the targeting to include the sheer nonsenses like the Glassthorn dimension, where the town-based boundary runs right through a house, and also flagging up the coalition's issue in relation to the old station space just beyond the river. Because Quite frankly, I can remember the closing days in East Northants, we were pretty well shoehorned into approving that local plan. And although the inspector was a very nice lady, and she did planning all right, I get the impression that in going through it, she just largely scratched the surface.
I think that seems fair. The only thing I would suggest is that there's actually quite a shift in the plan, wasn't there, to putting Arundel more specifically into one or two areas, and I suggested a couple of weeks ago putting this, we look forward to working with NNC Planning and Highways and enacting the positive vision and promise of the new cycling infrastructure, urban reimagination, public realm improvements, and continued use of the long-term car parking site, because that's what they now said, which wasn't in the old one. So at least that positively will hopefully give us some credibility.
I think that's right. I think there is a bit of a difficulty in a sense, because although the whole convalescence, maybe convalescence is what it
Feels like convalescence.
Convalescence argument isn't really something I think we can deal with in this particular document. I think that's a battle that's partially come and gone.
Well, the new boundary changes.
I
It
think
might change, yeah.
that, as I said before, I think we probably are going to have to be relatively restricted in this document, even if, for example, we then let our NNC councillors have cited what we said, and in a covering letter to the NNC councillors, flag up some of our wider concerns with the whole situation. And I'd be quite happy to draft something together.
Excellent.
James,
Yes. Strong support.
So are we all okay with that, David, to draft something to focus on the car park and then the positive message that they supposedly give about
Covering this up.
roads and transport stuff? Thank you very much indeed. 22-17501, minutes in the Estates Committee. We're up against it, AJ, anything exciting?
I think the main thing that needs discussion is, but we're going to talk about at the annual town council, is the central pathway in the rec, because we've got a quote, it was £18,000, so that's obviously a lot of money. At the time of the meeting, I'm waiting to other quotes.
Yeah, I put a photo of that in, so I'll raise that as an issue and say if anybody thinks it's good or bad.
Yeah,
Talk to some of us after.
yeah, we can talk about that's it.
Re-engage. Thank you very much indeed. 22-17502, an update on the National Lottery grant application to a new skate park. Do you have any?
Yes, I have an update, and we've been rejected.
Oh,
So the skate park application has not got any further, unfortunately, which is a problem. Have we managed to speak to?
I emailed, but I've had nothing back.
was there a particular reason why?
Yeah.
Their reasoning seemed to be that we didn't show how the community outside skateboarders, I think,
Would
use
be
the skate
using it.
park. Well, I think we just hopefully can apply with a better, we'll get our own skateboarding.
Yeah, we just can apply again. But this isn't a full application. This is their initial look for us to then go back, and they've already said no. So I don't think,
Skateboarding is now pretty much regarded as a sport rather than a recreation. So I wonder whether or not we should go Sport England and people like that. And some of the wider grant funds like Georgian.
yeah, the only thing with that, I mean, we were asking for 130,000 because although we've got 70, the cost of the project had gone up, hadn't it? So it had gone up to 200,000.
So my suggestion is, I go out to the skateboard park user group, as it were, and say, look, here's the situation, we're going to try and find out what we can do to make it more appealing,
Yeah,
but also go back to them, see if they can give us any hardcore stuff we could use. And so we'll look at other grants and see where that takes us. So it's a bit of holding news, hopefully, rather than anything else, but yeah, sad. Hopefully we'll come up with a better plan A and then maybe a plan B in the next couple of months. 22-17601, receive an update from the meeting held on the 18th of April. That's today. We've all had a copy of new terms and conditions or
well,
terms of reference.
I haven't, they'll be at the May annual town meeting, but this was just to say that we met today because there are a couple of questions about some of the things that we raised in the previous meeting, but we seem to have ironed it all out. John, if you want to say anything.
No communication on communication.
In progress, making progress.
Yeah.
22177, correspondence on Operation Crooked and Operation Snap. Again, I can only find one bit of information about one of them. Operation Snap is report other road users for stuff and send video footage in some way, which sounds.
What have I done? Given you two of the same?
There's both in there.
Yeah.
Oh no, the other one, although I've called it Snap, it is Crooked.
So specialist burglary teams. So that's good. That's nice to be like that. John?
Last month, I asked about crime figures and whether we were taking any notes of them, and whether we were seeing whether there are any trends. So I think it's quite good actually to see that in Northamptonshire we're seeing a downward trend. But we have no idea if that's being reflected in Ambridge, if we don't take any notice or map the stats and see what the trend line is. So does this give us any incentive to do that going forward? If Northampton Police are saying...
If you're keen to map them, they'll happily look at your mapping.
It's kind of keeping an eye on the trends.
Yeah, well, we haven't got this.
We haven't got any this month, but we've got some past. And I guess my question is, if they're down in Northamptonshire as a whole, are they also down now? Because if they are, great, and if they're not, what's happening out? Are we getting as much attention from this elite super force?
Possibly not, though there are more police vehicles, I think, observationally around there at the moment than there have been for a while. Talking of which, our CPSO was in Co-op recently and he was somewhere else recently. He's trying to be more visible and he's trying to be more active on people's phones as well, messaging and stuff. So I think there is an appearance to try and be more obvious. 22178, we're going to quickly do report only and then we'll do two items that need camera discussion very quickly. Lita, anything from you to report only at all?
No.
Max?
No.
John?
This is any other business.
Effectively, yeah.
So I do have a bit of new business, which is at all the council meetings that come to decisions to be made for action to be taken. We never get a report as to whether that action has been taken, or I rarely see a report saying whether that action has been taken. So, for example, this month, if we look at the minutes for March, there were various actions due to be taken in terms of data required from Barclays about the use of the cash machine, information about the Armed Forces Covenant, information from the interest
Okay. Time's tight. I think my understanding is that I would raise that if I had questions about those in the minutes section.
Should we not have a matters arising item on the agenda which says, I had this action to take, I've taken it, I had that action to take, I've taken it, because otherwise we don't know.
Can I just say that on Blackthorn Council, the clerk produces an action log. So it says whose responsibility something is, and in essence, what has happened, so that comes out with the agenda of the announced. And it is quite useful, but I think we are discouraged, in fact, I think we're really not at all supposed to have any other business at the end of minutes. We're told it. We can have matters for, it puts it here, report only, so you're sort of telling people something. But an action log will get around it.
But when that case, I can raise it at the next meeting I am, but I think we need to have something, otherwise you don't know if actions have been taken.
Yeah,
So
you
I'll
might
raise
be
it,
able
I'll
to.
raise it.
No, understood.
I'll raise it.
John, I've had a really long day, so I'm going to get it possible.
Okay.
So we'll put that on the
Raise
next
it,
one.
Add it on to the agenda for the next meeting.
I'm not here.
Okay, well, June. Okay. Rupert?
No,
David?
I can't remember, I had a feeling there was something that was gone completely, so no.
Nothing from me. So 22179, because of the confidential nature of business meant to be transacted, we asked the public temporarily for excluded and instructed to withdraw. So in turn,
Do you want to propose that, or who's?
David's proposed it, I'm going to second it.
So I'm just a bit confused about the meeting opening at 7:01. Closing at 7:01, opening again at past, and then closing again at past. I'm just very confused about that.
Oh, the personnel meeting.
Personnel.
Can I,
So
can
we're
we,
discussing-
can I just close the
Yeah.
meeting and shut the recording off, and then we'll start talking?
Right.
So it's we need to vote.
Are you all in favour of that?
What we ended up with. Yep, everyone's in favour.
Mr. Dew.